today. How are things going?
Well, I'm in the process of building the Pink Floyd exhibition, Their Mortal Remains, which opens on Thursday or Friday.
Yes.
And I'm up to my eyeballs in the sound of sawing, crashing, hammering, and all sorts of things, trying to get this ready in time. But it looks pretty damn good, so I'm okay.
Yes. We're getting that here in Toronto. I really am looking forward to seeing this exhibition. I noticed the signs were up, so I'm very, very
Yeah,
excited.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So I got to say, first of all, I want to personally thank you because I have more than half of the albums that you worked on in my collection, and I still have all these vinyls. And in your case, they always say don't judge a book by its cover, but in your case, it's a good thing to judge an album cover by its cover, correct?
I'd like to think so, yes. Um, uh, you know, uh, Sometimes people say to me, sometimes the cover was better than the music, which is very flattering, but that is not always the case. I think often the music was better than the cover, or they went hand in hand. And I think, for example, Dark Side of the Moon is a perfect example of where
Yes.
the cover matches the music inside. And they basically one hand washes the other. And you can't imagine listening to Dark Side of the Moon without having that prismatic image in front of you.
100%. I so agree with you. Yeah, and there's just nothing like having a vinyl album, I gotta say, like from the cover to the liner notes to the artwork inside. I mean, as we find out in this documentary, it's a work of art. There is no question. And so I wanted to start by asking you, Poe, when you were approached by Anton to do this documentary, like what were you thinking? Because, here it is 50 years or so later. And you go, like, did you ever think 50 years ago you'd be talking about vinyl records that you worked on now in 2023?
No, hypnosis in the 1970s was so busy. I had no time to think about anything to do with the future. I don't think I ever thought that the images would stand the test of. I knew they were good, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I thought that they would become iconic or culturally significant as playing a part in changing the way people saw things in the 1970s to now. I just didn't think that.
Right.
But however, I must answer your first question, which was about Anton. It wasn't Anton's decision to make the film. It was actually Colin Firth, the Oscar-winning actor, who approached me and said, "Would you like to make a film about hypnosis?" And I said, "I'd love to." And he said, "Well, I have a production company. I'm very happy to investigate this." So he did. And he came back to me and he said, "We definitely want to make the film. Who do you want to direct it?" And I said, I have no idea, but there's only one man for me, and that's Anton Corbijn, because
Wow.
he understands the medium that I work in. And he came probably 10 years later than hypnosis into the world of music, with videos, with movies like Control, with all the work he's done for U2 and Depeche Mode and stuff like that. And I said, his style is phenomenal. And if we could get him to direct this documentary, this would be my icing on the cake. And
Yeah.
he agreed to do it. It was synergy. It really was.
Yeah, and so fascinating. And then just getting the points of view from, the rockers, obviously, that you've worked with, so many of them. But, we got to go way back in time because, of course, if it wasn't for David Gilmour, you wouldn't have never had a career doing this, correct? Tell me a little bit about, you guys go way back.
Well, of course, the Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Syd Barrett, the originator of Pink Floyd, myself and Storm Thorgerson, we all came from Cambridge, so we all grew up together. And when the Pink Floyd became Pink Floyd, and we were all living in London, I was working at the BBC as a scenic artist, and Storm was at Royal College of Art, and the guys started Pink Floyd. They initially had no control. Bands in those days, when they signed to a record company, they had to use the in-house department. The only band who didn't do that were the Beatles.
Right.
And that was across the board, the only band who didn't do that were the Beatles. Well, Pink Floyd followed in their footsteps and demanded for their second album cover, Saucer Full of Secrets, that they have completely creative control. And again, unheard of. Those art departments that were in-house with record companies, men wore white gloves and white clinical kind of overalls. It was
Right.
weird. It was like walking into and we had long hair, earrings, velvet trousers, high heel boots, and we're completely off the wall. And they didn't want
Right.
to make of us. We were the kind of rock stars of the design world. But what happened basically is in a meeting with Pink Floyd, Storm and I happened to be there, and they were about to do Saucer Full of Secrets, who we're going to get to do to the cover, and David Gilmour, who had just joined the band and was a great friend from Cambridge, said, well, why don't we give Poe and Storm a chance to do them? They're involved in visuals, and we have complete creative control now. So
Yeah.
we did Saucer Full of Secrets and never looked back from there on in.
Yeah, amazing. And the story of how he met Storm too is so fascinating as well.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, why did it work so well with the two of you guys?
Storm and I were the best of friends. We both came from kind of single parents. We both very much enjoyed each other's company. We were like brothers. It was really a brotherly love that developed very quickly. And we both enjoyed the same sense of humor. We used to go see the Marx Brothers films together, go and watch Fellini movies together. We used to go down and see, painting exhibitions by Lucien Freud, all the things that were hip at those days. We were hanging out at the Indicate Bookshop in London where John and Yoko would be doing their thing. We did everything together, absolutely separable, and shared an apartment together. When we started Hypnosis, the roles were very clearly defined. I was a better photographer and I was good at that. So that's what I did. And Storm was much better than me at thinking up interesting ideas. We both had ideas. We both could think laterally and think out the box. The last thing we were ever going to do was a photograph of the band on the front with white lettering saying their name and the text of the name of the album. We were never going to do that. We just simply weren't. We were interested to do what I probably would call art in inverted commas, but there was a sincerity about us to make pictures which were not related to the commercialism of the music industry. We simply weren't interested.
Yeah,
and that comes through in the film.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, how ballsy, because honestly, you're putting out an album and go to the management, or the management says, are you kidding? Like, doesn't say Pink Floyd on there, doesn't say, whatever. I mean, I don't know, like, do you think that caught the eye of record buyers more because they'd see that prism or the cow or, those images, but they would be like, well, whose album is this? Like, I just find that amazing strategy.
I think that none of it was deliberate. And I think also that you have to remember this was the days when people went out and bought albums on Saturday mornings.
100%. Yeah.
Go out with one album in mind, and they'd have enough money to buy a second album. So when you walked into a record shop emporium of 10,000 album covers staring at you, you better have something that looked pretty different and stood out for them to go, maybe I should try that one. And I think that's what we tried to do. And it wasn't deliberate, and it wasn't a psychological move on our department, in our minds to change the record buying public. But I think there's no question that Hypnosis album covers helped change visuals in the record industry to a point where they became very important signposts to what the particular band was up to. So, for example, Led Zeppelin, if I think about Presence with a black object, a family sitting around a dining room table at a boat show, what the heck that got to do with heavy rock? Absolutely nothing. But the black object has, and it was something that everybody needed. And so when I showed it to Jimmy Page and he said, that's it, he got it immediately, that you couldn't do without Led Zeppelin. Without Led Zeppelin, you couldn't live. That was the symbolism of it. Not that we ever discussed that then, but there was a great deal of thought went into these album covers, and none of them were sort of came about by accident. And sometimes, like Led Zeppelin, I'd have no clue as to what the album was about or the title. Whereas something like 10cc, we always wanted the lyrics because they were so visual, the lyrics. Who writes things like, the Eiffel of the Tower, or life's just a minestrone, or
Right.
those kind of things, and you immediately set you off thinking on a path of alternative imagery, not
Yeah.
just the band.
Yeah, it's just truly amazing. And I also love the story about the stunt man that you set on fire. I mean,
Yeah,
it's truly amazing. Like, I mean, that kind of died, seriously. How many takes did you do?
15 takes. But
Unbelievable.
what's interesting about that picture, I think, was that when Storm and I drew up all the roughs, because we were very amateur, we used to get a piece of square white cardboard and I'd
Yeah.
sketch them I could draw. And we went up to Abbey Road Studios to talk to the band. The band, unbeknownst to us, had elected to bring everybody in Abbey Road Studios, which were about 50 people, into the canteen to see Storm make the presentation. I'm almost unnerved, but he gave this great presentation about a man on fire, a guy upside down in a lake, an invisible businessman, all the images that are on Wish You Were Here.
Yeah.
And the end of it, he got a round of applause from everybody. And I remember Roger Waters just turned around and said, "Well, go and do it." And I turned around to Storm and said, "How are we going to set a man on fire?" And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, we'll do it for real. How else are we going to?" And that was I think that was the essence of the day. You've got to remember that in those days, in the 1970s, albums sold in tens of millions, and money
Yes.
was wash. It was a wash in the industry. So
Yeah.
anything we wanted to do, oh, I want to photograph a sheep on a psychiatric couch in front of the sea. Well, you can do that surely in the south of England. No, 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 the sea's too grey and it's January. I want to go to Hawaii. Oh, okay, off you go.
Yeah.
People didn't say no. Nobody said no to our
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no to you either. You're very charming. I would, for sure. Okay, I got to wrap it up, and I have to ask my final question, and it's unfair.
Yeah.
Absolute favorite band to work with?
Wow. You're asking me for favorites. That's really difficult. I think probably I enjoyed working with Led Zeppelin more than anybody, because there was an intellectual process there working with them whereby Jimmy Page understood precisely where Hypnosis were coming from. He realized that our sincerity was about the image and about the picture.
Right.
And that sincerity ran absolutely in parallel with his thoughts about Led Zeppelin. And I think he understood Hypnosis very well. And I embraced that. I really did. I loved his thought process about things, dark as they might be.
Yeah, dark as they might be. And also it's interesting too, because for a band to not have themselves on a cover, I mean, they have to set aside ego. And we know bands have big egos.
Oh,
That's very interesting to me that you were able
yeah.
to do that with many of these covers and not have the band featured their faces and their names. I think that's fascinating.
And I never fell out with anybody either, not at all. And as I say, when it came to getting individual artists to appear in the film, like say Paul McCartney,
Yeah.
I just up Paul and I said, "Look, this is the film we're making. It's Anton Corbijn." He said, "No." I said, "Yeah, man. You
Of
used to call
course.
me Posey." Said, "Yeah, man. Yeah, Posey. Let's do it, man. I'm cool." And to have that relationship 50 years later with all those artists is a privilege. It really is.
Yeah, well, it was my privilege to have the opportunity to chat with you today, Poe. What a thrill. Thank you so much again, personally, for all those amazing albums I have in my collection. And we look forward to hopefully in person someday soon. Come to Toronto and we'll have a coffee, okay?
Okay. Thank you so
All right.
much.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.